Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar, and once again, this is my opinion. In the last Everybody Loves Raymond review at the end, I mentioned a gag about ring finger, just to start this off. I was one episode off. That's actually the next episode involving diamonds. This episode is The Car. Another title that gives a small hint about what the episode's plot's going to be about, but doesn't fully give away everything. And of course, the plot of this episode centers around Ray and Debra purchasing Frank and Marie's old Valiant, made by Plymouth. Episode begins with Ray watching the kids. Debra comes in. This is one of those pre-credit sequences that nice for an opening gag. Continues after the credits and then segues into the main plot. It's where he's trying to argue with the kids off screen before Debra walks in that these two melodies of childhood songs are essentially the same melody just with different lyrics, which, given that they're childhood songs, makes sense. It's Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and A B C D. A B C D E F G, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and it's like it's the same song. And then the next one afterwards is This Old Man, He Played One, then slow it down. This old man, he played one, and think of a purple dinosaur. That still makes me laugh a little bit. And he's like, oh, especially Ray's follow-up line. I always knew he was a purple hack. Of course, this is the 90s, the height of when Barney was in vogue. I don't know if this is at the height of it. I have to go back and look at my years, but I could tell you as a kid I watched Barney, so definitely a joke of the time, but one that even in retrospect still is funny, though. A couple more decades, people might be going, purple dinosaur, what? Once that gag's over, Frank and Marie enter. And one little gag here that I like is that once they mention it's the end of an era, which they're referring to getting rid of the car, the first thing Ray's mind jumps to is divorce. And he's like, well, at least it was amicable. It's like, really, Ray? You really think your parents would get divorced like that? They didn't get divorced in the previous argument, and they're never going to get divorced. Besides, I think if they were going to get divorced, they probably would tell you in a different way. Although, it's a little gaggy. You can understand why Ray would jump that. Well, they're going to get rid of the Valiant. They have a couple offers for it, and Ray suggests, hey, we'll buy it. I mean, we're looking to get a second vehicle. This would be a nice one just to have as a second vehicle in reserve before we save up to get the other vehicle we want to get, a minivan. Debra's initially against it, but Ray's really adamant on getting it. It's like, hey, we don't have to haggle. We don't have to go through a salesman to get this. Which, as someone who has recently gone through having to go with a car salesman, I can attest to that. I can see why he would not want to go through the haggling of it. Which, I was at the dealership for 4 hours, give or take. And the majority of that time was the haggling, waiting for the financing to go through, discussing prices and all that. And boy, it's like most of my Saturday. Probably should have went earlier or gone to the gym first, but hey, you don't know these things, hey. So I understand why Ray doesn't want to go through a salesman, even though there are dangers of buying a car through a secondary person, which, even though the Focus that I got rid of did serve me well for almost 4 years, being a purchase through a non-salesman buyer, it kind of had those issues, but then again, that one was a salvage, so that was involved in a fatal accident beforehand. I just found out. But, you know, it's one of those things, you get what you pay for. $3,000. I mean, it served its purpose for 4 years. Whereas here, it's a car that's over 20 years old. And as the episode goes, we see that, given how Frank is, it's in a condition to where it's drivable, but probably not the best vehicle to drive in. They haggle a bit, and they settle on a good price. And I just love how Ray nails it down to the cent before Frank relents. $462.25, done. That always gets a little chuckle out of me. And a little side gag in this is that Ray reveals he used fake ID, which is the first of many things we find out that Ray did when he was younger to try to rebel a little bit against Marie. Because as you see as Marie is, as she is now, you can just imagine how she must have been when Ray and Robert were growing up. Probably not as bad, but even still growing up with that, it's like, oh boy. When you get out of the house, you're definitely going to go and do stuff. Now, it makes me wonder if Ray's photo is actually on there, and if so, how the hell would anyone believe he is 45 years old? Because I could tell you, as someone that handles IDs for a living as part of my job as a security officer, I would look at the face, look at him, and then look at the age. I'm like, there's no way in hell you are 45 years old. No way. Even accounting for graceful aging, there's no way that a 17-year-old is going to look like he's 45. No way. I mean, even I look older with the beard, but even so, I look a little younger than I actually am. I'm 31. Most people think I'm 25 to 28. Only a couple years younger. So, but there's no way it's going to be that different. Even with the most graceful of aging. Because there would still be some tells that he's 45. So I'm just guessing that he probably went to bars that they're like, alright, and they don't look at it too carefully. Of course, Marie just says she's disappointed and lets it go. Which is kind of a little head scratcher. Like, is she really more concerned about selling the car and that thing? We don't find out about specifics other than him going out and partying. That she decides to drop it. And I guess also, since it's not connected with anything personal, I guess that's why she drops it. Because as we'll find out in a later episode, even though there's something that happened decades before she finds out about it, she's going to hold a grudge. Of course, that's at season 3 once all the characters are fully realized. And plus, it's a personal thing. Well, they get the car, and it breaks down on Debra. I just love how Patricia Heaton plays this. Where she's describing Ray, how it broke down, how she had to take the kids, and you can definitely tell that she's a wife that has had quite the day where she's letting all the stress out in a slightly constructive manner, telling Ray, hey, this is bad. Your dad sold us a lemon. And of course Ray, being in typical stuff like, did you flood it? It's like, you gotta go with it right. And even when she goes to complain to Frank and Marie, they even saying the same thing. I mean, it doesn't have problems, it has character. That's the way Frank would label it. It is a problem. If the car breaks down and you have to buy a new fuel pump, that is a problem. Which makes me wonder, especially given how Frank is, did he know the fuel pump was about to go out? Did he know about all these problems? I mean, in a later episode, we find out he knew about his other vehicle's brakes being bad for a long time. Mechanic always saying you need to replace them, and he didn't. I mean, me, even with the Focus, if there was an issue like that, I would replace the brakes. I mean, some things I'd be like, maybe next one. But something like brakes, yeah. First time I hear the brakes are bad, I would replace it. I wouldn't be like, yeah, he always says it. Just like the fuel pump, it's like, yeah, I'd replace it. But it's like, it's one of those things that makes you just wonder. And of course, if a salesman sold a car to someone in that type of condition, that was not being sold as is, like a part thing, being sold, you know, like how I bought mine as a used car, Carfax and everything, you know there'd be trouble, especially in a state with lemon laws, which is how she described this car. Your dad sold us a lemon. Tries to get the money back, and the moment she asks for the money back, there's like a switch that flips in Frank and Marie where they're like, does Ray know you're over here? This doesn't sound exactly grateful. And then, of course, Robert walks in, finds out what the whole thing is, and I just love how his first two questions are, is this about me? Because of the tension. That which you can kind of understand, since the room is tension filled right when he walks in, almost like, you know, the thing of when you're talking about someone and they walk in and you're like, oh crap. So you can kind of understand why that's one of his first questions. And he goes, it's about the will, isn't it? Which, of course, in a later episode we find out that he's getting the silverware in the will, so he's probably wondering, is it about something else that I'm in the will about? What is it? Am I getting the house? But no, he finds out it's about the car, and he drops a bombshell. Which, when you find this out, it makes you rethink all the previous scenes involving the Valiant and Ray, and that is that this is his old, as Robert calls it, make-out mobile. And Debra's reaction, given that the car has that label, is justified. Now, Robert calls it a make-out mobile, but he also mentions that he called the car Lucky, which they don't come out and state it, because as they say in a later commentary, sometimes it's funnier to allude to something, especially in a network sitcom, using euphemistic language rather than coming out and full-on saying it. This is something, of course, we find out later in a Season 3 episode involving Frank accidentally giving out condoms for Halloween, which they call them by name in a later episode when they refer to it, but in the episode proper they don't. They give it euphemisms like things. Here, they refer to Ray losing his virginity as lucky, which is a little euphemism I did not really catch the first few times I watched it, or I was slightly getting it, but not as obvious. But as I watched the episode as I gotten older, I'm like, oh yeah. And the fun thing about that is that Ray even refers to sex by name later on in the episode, so that should have been like, it shouldn't have been, should have been, ah. And of course with that thing, you know Deborah's going to be very annoyed. And of course, when they bring it up, the parents react, and Marie's the best reaction. I thought she was such a nice girl. Of course, given the fact that Ray had sex with her in the car, you can understand why she'd be like that. Makes me wonder if she knew that Ray and Lisa, that was his girlfriend, that he lost his virginity to, did that in the car. And when she found out, because if she found out when Ray was still a teen, I can imagine her overreacting. I mean, if she overreacted to Fruit of the Month Club, she's going to overreact to finding out that her little Raymond has done such an adult act. And of course, Frank would be like, in my car? Of course, he'd be like, ah, boy, but then the moment he finds out it's in the car, he's like, in my car? Ah, and then go to see their stains. Of course, first thing Debra does is go to confront Ray, who is cleaning the Valiant, the outside. And this whole little conversation's front half has a lot of double entendres, where Ray is mainly referring to the car itself, but the wording connects back to him getting lucky with Lisa. Like, what did you learn, Ray? Well, I learned you just can't jump in and expect her to turn over right away. Obviously referring to how to start the car, but connect back. There's a couple more before Debra flips her lid. And then, of course, it's like, this is the whole reason you want the car I'm junking it. No, no, no. And Ray's whole reason for wanting to keep the car goes beyond luck. I'm sure that keeping the vehicle, at least for a little bit, has to do with that. But it's more because the car represents more than just his first time. It represents getting away from the house. That, you know, once he got his license, he could get in the car, they could go to drive, they could go to the beach, other places. And that during that time, if his dad wanted to get to him, he would take away the car. Which he probably did when he found out what Ray did in it. It's like, it's the one thing that his dad could do to him. So it was more about freedom. Which, of course, since he now lives across the street from his parents, he doesn't really have as much. Which, we're going to find out a little connection to that thread by the end of this season. Of course, Debra decides to, you know, you can keep it. And then later on, she decides, hey, Ray, you get to drive it. And part of that is because we get a double flashback in this episode. Both of these flashbacks include a cameo by Christian Bale, who is nowadays more known for being in True Blood and Once Upon a Time. In that one, of course, she played Maleficent. In this one, she plays Lisa in the two flashbacks, and you can tell that there's been a slight gap in time between both of them, based on both how she and Ray are dressed up. Ray, of course, got that very 70s hair, and she's got braces in the second one, and she seems a little bit more preppy in the second one. Now, the first one, I assume, is more than likely just Debra imagining things based on stories she's heard about Lisa. And then, of course, just looking in the car like, oh no, my mind's running away with me. It's a nice little flashback. Second one, since it's from Ray, it's an obvious flashback of him sitting in the car with Lisa, kissing. And, of course, if you connect it with that, the first one's probably also based on a slight twist to the story that Ray told her, you know, to make it sound better. To where it's more of a mutual thing, whereas in the other one, Ray's a bit more awkward with the approach and not as confident. And it definitely comes across that way, like, you know, I thought we could warm each other up. And of course, she's got the braces and all that, they kiss and all that. Nice little moment. And then we get a cameo by Robert. This is the first time we find out back in the 70s he had an afro. It's a nice little moment. Yeah. Of course, by the end, they decide to get rid of the car after a nice little talk where Ray and Debra, you know, talk about, you know, yeah, maybe there is a little bit of it, but just to make peace, he decides to get rid of the car. And they decide to create their own moment in there by making out in it. And maybe a little more if it goes there. But in one final little gag, the heater of the car sets the car on fire. There's a metaphor in there too, but it's very funny. And then to add to it, right as it looks like, okay, they're about to get steamy, but is the car about to get even worse? Robert comes in with a fire extinguisher, puts his fire out, and more than one way, because he literally sprays the two of them. And when Ray opens the door to see Robert, his hair is all poofy with the fire extinguisher stuff, and Robert's like, "Yeah, I was walking by, saw your car on fire." It's a nice little way to end this episode. All in all, this is a pretty fun episode. Not one of the best in the series. Not one of my favorites in the entire season or in the entire series. But it is a pretty solid episode. You find out a little bit more about Ray's past. Debra slightly overreacts to it, but her overreaction is understandable. And sorry about that noise. And I'm not entirely justified, but it's one of those ones that if you do not know the entire reason, you can understand it. Especially when you combine the fact that the car, you got to put some money into it. It's like, that same money could have gone towards a down payment on the minivan you wanted. Of course, we don't know how much money Ray and Debra have in their savings and everything, so it's like, it's only $425, and how much would a water pump cost in the 90s? But you can still justify the anger. Robert's only a couple scenes, and it's good to see him. No mention of Amy in the episode, even in passing. We do see her in the next episode, though. Our little cameo from Lisa's actor. She does a pretty good job for the 2 scenes she's in. There's really not much to her character other than past love interest in the flashback. It is nice. Her chemistry in the first flashback's fun, especially when they're talking about Senior Murphy and him being a dork. And get to hear textbook, and since they're talking about Spanish, it's the literal textbook Spanish. Frio. It is a fun episode. And of course, following up is one where we get to see a ring finger and a surprise cameo by an iguana. And that concludes my review of the car. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and share it. Any way you guys can help expand the audience would be appreciated, especially in this age of the YouTube algorithm being very kabuki-ish, to use a wrestling term. If you guys want to support the channel, I got the PayPal link below in the description box. And if you would like to request any reviews, you can also send it down there as well. See you guys later.